as a national security risk. Eliza Philippidis reports.
A city on lockdown. These are the scenes just moments after the shooting. Confusion, panic. The 29-year-old gunman opened fire targeting people in his sights. He attacked using an automatic weapon. The shooting started at around 7 last night local time. People ran from the scene, shutting themselves inside bars and restaurants. Some people had no clue what they were walking into.
When I saw the army with a group of 10 to 12 soldiers walking towards me with their guns pointed to the street, to the people, and around them everyone was running from all directions. So as I was walking past a building with a courtyard, I entered the courtyard, and as other people next to me, we threw ourselves to the ground because we didn't know what is happening.
Some people tried to help those who were shot.
And I saw a person with apparently 2 shots into the head lying on the bridge here. We tried to engage in resuscitation activities. We took him into a restaurant and we tried for 45 minutes to resuscitate him. There are no ambulance services apparently able to enter the area. And after 45 minutes we stopped the resuscitation efforts because the doctor told us over the phone that it's senseless.
Witnesses describe seeing several people lying on the ground struck down by the shooter. As soon as it became safe, ambulance crews were sent in to collect the injured and take them to hospital. Police said the suspected gunman was known to authorities and was on France's S watch list of suspected extremists. Earlier yesterday, authorities went to his Strasbourg home to arrest him, but he was not there. They found grenades in the property. President Emmanuel Macron has been briefed at the Emergency Command Centre back in Paris, and questions will be raised about how to best protect the French people from attacks like these. Security has been stepped up in recent years after a series of attacks in France by Islamist gunmen. Eliza Philippidis, BBC News.
BBC's Kasia Madeira is in Brussels. Just a short while ago, she gave us an update on what we know so far.
The shooting took place at 8 o'clock in the evening local time on Tuesday evening, and it took place near Strasbourg's Christmas market. It is one of France's oldest and most popular markets, with millions of people attending every year. Now, the gunman is known to the security services. He was on a Fiche S, which is a terrorism list that the security services keep an eye on, but it has hundreds of thousands of names on it, so he wasn't at all being closely monitored. France's counter-terrorism prosecutor has now opened an investigation, and it's understood that much earlier on Tuesday, there was a dawn raid at the gunman's own apartment in connection with a robbery that had taken place. The gunman had not been present, but grenades had been found at his apartment.
Kasia Madeira for us there. Just a short time ago I spoke to Pierre France, a local journalist in Strasbourg. Asked him whether he can confirm reports that the suspect had been wounded and he was shot by police.
That has been confirmed, and he may have been wounded because he received a fire from the military who was patrolling the Christmas market, and a soldier also have been wounded in the fire exchange.
Yeah, are you able to tell us any more about the area that the security services are trying to search at the moment? How difficult is that going to be?
Well, there's currently an helicopter that is patrolling the city, and there are obviously a lot of security forces all around. The government rose the Vigipirate level, which is a terrorist alert level, at a higher level, which is called Urgence Attentat. It's the highest level, actually. So there will be controls around the borders, which have been closed. It will be very difficult for someone who is alone to avoid being caught. But
and Pierre, apart from the concern, of course, of finding this particular gunman, there will be great worries about whether he is on his own or part of a network, whether more attacks might be planned.
Well, that obviously we have absolutely no information on that. Also, it is not at this moment related to any Islamic background.
He was on, we are told, the so-called Fiche S list, the watch list, but there are many hundreds of thousands of people on that, aren't there?
Exactly.
The system has been criticised, hasn't it, for not being very effective. What do you make of it?
Yeah, exactly. The Fiche S is merely some kind of a police memo based database. So anyone can be on it. Some journalists are on it. Some environment activists are on it, and of course Islamists. And there are many people who are in this database. It doesn't mean anything.
Strasbourg journalist Pierre France speaking to me a short while ago. Dr. Joseph Downing from the London School of Economics specialises in French security and politics. I asked him about the challenges facing the police, troops and security services.
They're entering a very problematic phase in this operation, to be honest, because they're trying to apprehend this individual before he can undertake what several other individuals have done in France, which is to go out in a blaze of glory in a hostage type situation where that has happened with Mohamed Merah in 2012, or those that took hostages in the Hypercacher supermarket in Paris. So they'll be desperately seeking to find this individual, but also, as you've highlighted, they'll be racing to find any information they can on who this guy is, what are his connections, if he has any, to criminality or to broader sorts of terrorist networks, and are there further attacks planned? The fact that grenades are found in his apartment this morning is actually quite worrying, because it hints at a bigger cache of arms.
And on that point, there have been several instances, haven't there, of so-called petty criminals carrying out relatively low-level crimes, but using heavy-duty weaponry.
Yeah, it's such a big problem in French cities. A lot of my time living in Marseille in the south, and you know, in Marseille, in Paris, in Lyon, robbing a corner store with a Kalashnikov is almost a daily occurrence. You can actually purchase a Kalashnikov in most French cities for just a few €100. I mean, this is really, really worrying. Occasionally the police find rocket launchers and all kinds of military weapons, which, you know, because these individuals have connections in the crime world, can get hold of under the pretense of committing a crime and then go out and commit a terrorist attack.
And the authorities were apparently trying to pick him up as a robbery or burglary suspect. You could say, though, couldn't you, that the system worked in some ways. This military initiative, Operation Sentinelle, which was nationwide, it was soldiers patrolling as part of that who made contact with him, who were told wounded him.
Yeah, no, in this particular case, possibly, but there have been numerous other cases where those soldiers taking part in the operation have actually been targets themselves. And to me, that operation, in terms of its effectiveness, is more really about reassuring the public and making a kind of symbolic gesture that we're doing something, rather than it actually really being that effective on the ground.
Have you heard any more from your sources about this suggestion, which I say we absolutely cannot confirm, that the suspect may have been cornered somewhere around this Parc d'Etoile, which is not very far from the European Parliament?
No, I mean, I don't have any more information other than that. But this is, as I said, an extremely delicate phase of the operation, because this is a densely packed urban area. Anyone that's ever looked at, you know, counterinsurgency or policing of these kinds of areas can see that things can get very messy very quickly, and they're going to want to try and, you know, get this guy out of here as soon as possible.
And just to look for someone in an area like that as a citizen, someone who is not armed, is tricky enough, but in this circumstance, really difficult. Yeah,
needle in a haystack. I mean, we're talking about the guy could be in a bin, the guy could be in a bin room, the guy could be hiding in someone's apartment, he could be in a cellar. I mean, really, it is so difficult. It's a needle in a haystack type operation.
And obviously we've been saying this is very close, or relatively close, to the European Parliament. There is no suggestion, I think, that that was the target, though it was in lockdown for quite some time.
Yeah.
Lifted now. Christmas markets, though, because they're so crowded this time of year, will always be vulnerable.
Totally. As we're all shopping areas, and we can see it whether it's the street markets of Baghdad or Kabul, which are targeted by suicide bombers, or whether it's the Christmas markets of Europe, or even our very own Oxford Street. They're soft targets. The European Parliament will have been for a very long time a very difficult target because it's locked down. It's got constant armed guards. You have to pass through metal detectors to go inside, I imagine, right? Like many other political buildings in Europe. Whereas Christmas markets, shopping streets, you can't check everybody. It's not an airport. You can't have that level of security where you have to go through a body scanner. It's just not feasible. Thus, they remain soft targets.
Dr. Joseph Downing from the London School of Economics. Much more to come for you on BBC News, including this. We report on The Guardian's journalists killed and imprisoned, now collectively named Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
John Lennon was shot at the entrance to the Dakota building in the center of New York. There's been a crowd here standing in more or less silent vigil, and the flowers have been piling up.
The 14th ceasefire of this war ended at the walls of the old city of Dubrovnik. This morning, witnesses said shells were landing every 20 seconds.
People are celebrating the passing of a man they hold responsible for hundreds of deaths and oppression. Elsewhere, people have been gathering to mourn his passing.
Imelda Marcos, the widow of the former president of the Philippines, has gone on trial in Manila. She's facing 7 charges of tax evasion. She pleaded not guilty.
The Prince and Princess of Wales are to separate. A statement from Buckingham Palace said the decision had been reached amicably.
Very good to have you with us on BBC News. The latest headlines for you this hour. A gunman has opened fire near a Christmas market in the French city of Strasbourg. At least 3 people are reported dead, several injured. The gunman is known to the authorities and still on the run. They've begun a terror investigation. Officials say he'd been previously identified as a national security risk. To other news now, and leading Conservative Brexiteers have told BBC News they are increasingly confident they have enough support to trigger a confidence vote in Theresa May. So far, no official confirmation. Our political editor Laura Kuenssberg, though, says the mood has darkened around the Prime Minister in Westminster.
Several sources have told the BBC, including a cabinet minister, that they do expect the Prime Minister is now going to have to face a vote of no confidence from those in her own party. Yes, enough of her MPs, it's believed tonight, have submitted letters to the chair of the Tory backbench committee to trigger a contest, an attempt to force her out. Now, I stress, though, and I can't say this heavily enough, there is no official confirmation of this. Number 10 are downplaying it. Sir Graham Brady, the man who only really he knows, will not make any comment on this. But it is a marker of the degree of concern, the degree of disagreement, the degree of anxiety and the lack of faith in the Prime Minister's leadership, that is the sense here, the very profound sense here that's changed in the last couple of days. And from talking to people about this over, a period of more than 2 years now, my sense is there were many people on the Remain side as well as the Brexit side who were willing always to give her the benefit of the doubt, but that goodwill is ebbing away pretty fast. As I say, we can't be exactly sure about the next sequence of events, and I can't stress that heavily enough. And we may well be at the stage where Theresa May has one last chance to fight for her leadership, one I'm pretty sure she will absolutely take, because if we've learnt one thing about the Prime Minister through all of this turmoil, she is certainly not somebody who gives up without a fight.
Laura Kuenssberg for us outside the Palace of Westminster. Our Europe editor, Katja Adler, has more details now from Brussels.
What EU leaders have observed ever since we held our EU referendum is political turmoil that is still ongoing in the UK. They see a country split and divided over Brexit, and that means that however much Theresa May travel around Europe and shake hands with European prime ministers and presidents, they don't really want to make big concessions to her right now, because deep down they believe that whatever they are actually willing to give her may still not be enough to get the Brexit deal through a very divided Parliament. Tonight we had a tweet from Donald Tusk. He's the president of the European Council. He described his discussion with Theresa May today as long and frank, which isn't exactly the most positive word. He said EU leaders want to help Theresa May, but they're not sure how. And that's because they think that the Brexit deal, this divorce deal that right now is on the table and was negotiated over 19 months, is the best compromise deal possible if the UK wants to leave the EU, if the UK wants to leave the European single market and the customs union as well. So yes, Theresa May says she'll continue with her European tour. On Thursday, there is an emergency Brexit summit of EU leaders here in Brussels. But Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron, what they think now is that the ball is very much in the UK's court over Brexit, not in theirs.
Our Europe editor, Katja Adler. President Trump's first meeting with senior Democrats since they won control of the lower house, the House of Representatives, in November's midterm elections, has ended in a televised row. Mr. Trump said he would be proud to shut down the US government if he didn't secure billions of dollars in funding for a border wall.
Nancy, I do. And we need border security. Nancy, we need border security.
You were called 20 times to shut down the government. You say, I want to shut down the government. We don't. When the president brags that he won North Dakota and Indiana, he's in real trouble.
Please don't characterize the strength that I bring to this meeting.
Elections have consequences, Mr. President.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck.
Comment that may come back to haunt him. Let's get some more of the day's other news now. Days after the detention of a top Chinese telecoms executive in Canada, Justin Trudeau said he's seeking answers over Beijing's detention of a former Canadian diplomat who now works for a think tank. It's not clear whether his detention is linked to the arrest of Meng Wanzhou, who is the chief finance officer of the mobile phone company Huawei. Jurors say a man who drove his car into a crowd of protesters in Virginia last year, killing a woman, should serve a life sentence plus 419 years in prison. After 2 days of deliberation, a jury recommended on Tuesday that James Alex Fields also pay $480,000 in fines. He still faces a number of hate crime charges in a separate federal trial that could bring the death penalty. At least 4 people have been killed in a shooting inside a cathedral in Brazil. A gunman opened fire on worshippers in Campinas in the state of Sao Paulo just as the midday service was finishing. Police say he fired 2 weapons and appeared to target people at random before killing himself at the altar. Many of his victims were elderly. 6 people who say they're migrants from Iran have been rescued from a small boat off the south coast of England. More than 100 miles to cross the English Channel from France in November. The Dover-Calais route is the world's busiest shipping lane. The British authorities are warning of the dangers of trying to cross it in small vessels. Our correspondent Colin Campbell has this exclusive report.
Emerging from the darkness, an inflatable dinghy. It's 2 a.m. We're in the middle of the English Channel. The dinghy is motoring at full speed from France towards the Kent coast.
Are you okay? Okay?
We get a thumbs up. However, the boat is dangerously overcrowded, taking on water. The 6 migrants cold, scared, desperate, but determined to get to the UK.
This dinghy is in a precarious position. It's vulnerable because it's now entering a shipping lane and there are a number of ships coming towards it. So we're shepherding it almost, I think, at the moment, so it remains in a safe position.
We're on board a Dover fishing boat. This is the 3rd migrant rescue for skipper Matthew Coker in 3 months.
There was 5 ships coming down in one lump, and he cut across in front of them. And I don't know if we hadn't been with him, then ships wouldn't have gone round it. Because I'm only just picking him up, so I don't think they would have seen him. As you can see, there's no lights on the boat at all.
The migrants, who are wrapped in blankets and scarves, speak little English.
Where are you from? You're Iranian. The water at the moment appears to be going into the back of the dinghy, but they're continuing, they're not stopping, they don't want our help. It's a desperate race to try to get to the UK for these people.
Although they decline our offers of help, they do stop to ask for water, which I lower down to them in a net.
Okay.
In the last 3 months, more than 100 migrants have made this treacherous crossing. A fortnight ago, we exposed how some of the smuggling operations are being planned from a makeshift migrant camp in Dunkirk. We secretly filmed using an undercover researcher.
A boat, it will cost you £3,000 to £4,000. I'm taking 3 people with me. They pay in cash. We get a boat and off we go.
Last night the weather and sea conditions in the channel were good, but in a small boat, in the dark, it's still incredibly dangerous.
The message is going back to the camps or to the people on the other side, to the gangs, that it's working. So more are going to come, and I'm certain they will keep coming until there's an absolute tragedy.
These migrants were safely rescued by the RNLI and the Border Force, but it is a potentially deadly route that more and more are trying. Despite winter, despite the risks, the migrants keep coming. Colin Campbell, BBC News, Dover.
Some call them the Guardians. Journalists killed and imprisoned have been named Time magazine's Person of the Year. Among them, 2 Reuters reporters imprisoned in Myanmar. It was a year ago that Wa Lone and Jo So-u were arrested for investigating a massacre of Rohingya Muslims by the Burmese army. Their families have again called on Myanmar's government to release them. Our correspondent Nick Beek reports now from Yangon.
It's a special moment in Myanmar when any baby reaches 100 days old. Here, for Tet Ta Angel's mum, the proudest of days. But it's a party her dad isn't allowed to come to. He's behind bars. A journalist who says his only crime was doing his job. Wa Lone and his Reuters colleague Jo So-u were about to expose a massacre by the Burmese army. And it's widely believed that's why they were set up and then convicted.
This is an auspicious and supposedly happy day for my daughter, so I'm trying to smile. But deep down, I just miss my husband so much. All the time I have been hoping he'll be released.
For exactly a year now, the 2 Reuters journalists have been locked up inside this prison here in Yangon. During that time, there have been calls from around the world for them to be freed. The civilian government here in Myanmar, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, has the power to order their immediate release. But so far, the Nobel Peace Prize winner has refused to do so. The journalist's wives have begged her to intervene.
My husband is innocent. My husband absolutely would never harm his country. Miss Aung San Suu Kyi, my husband respects you so highly. He's always proud of you. My husband always defends you when you're criticized.
The jailing of these journalists has raised deep concerns for the media, free speech and democracy in Myanmar. It seems this is still a country where speaking the truth comes at a heavy price. Nick Beek, BBC News, Yangon.
Let's just remind you before we leave you for the moment of that breaking news. A huge manhunt is underway right now in the French city of Strasbourg, where a gunman has killed 3 people and wounded 12 others, some of them critically, near a busy Christmas market. France's Interior Minister has said 350 officers are searching for the suspect, believed to be 29, born in Strasbourg, and who was known to security services as a possible terrorist threat. It's reported this started when the man fled his flat in Neudorf, a residential district in the southeast of the city, on Tuesday morning, as it was being searched by police in connection with a robbery or burglary. Grenades were found during that search. Then it's reported later in the evening a gunman shot at soldiers patrolling. They were part of the nationwide Operation Sentinelle, launched in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks around Paris in January 2015. It's reported that he was wounded and 1 soldier. More on that to come. Thank you very much for watching.
Hello. You can expect a definite chill in the air over the next few days, particularly as a biting wind picks up. But for western parts of the UK, there is a little bit of rain in the forecast. What we've got on the satellite picture from a little earlier on is this stripe of cloud. It's a frontal system pushing in from the Atlantic. It is bringing some outbreaks of rain. But whereas we might normally expect a front to sweep through, bringing rain for all of us, this front is running up against some resistance, this area of high pressure blocking the front's progress. So it won't get much further than the southwest of England, Wales, Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland. Here some rain, but elsewhere Wednesday getting off to a largely dry, if rather cloudy start with the odd fog patch. Through the day we should see brighter conditions spreading from the east, so more in the way of sunshine, but with that some colder air spreading from the east as well. So the mildest weather will be in the west, 10 degrees in Belfast, in Stornoway and in Plymouth. Now as we go through Wednesday evening into the night, we'll see more and more clear skies filtering through. Still a bit of patchy cloud, but where the skies do stay clear and starry for any length of time where you are, it is going to get a little bit chilly. You can see the pale green and blue colours here on our temperature chart. Our towns and cities around about 2, 3 or 4 degrees, but some spots in the countryside can expect a touch of frost. And then into Thursday, well, this weather battleground continues. Frontal systems still trying to bring rain in from the west, high pressure blocking their progress. And around this high, at this stage, we're going to have an increasingly brisk east or southeasterly wind, and that is going to make it feel cold. So on Thursday, any wet weather really confined to the far southwest of the country, particularly parts of Cornwall. Elsewhere, largely dry, apart from the odd shower just sprinkling in across the North Sea coast. There will be some spells of sunshine, but look at the strength of the wind, particularly in some southern and western areas, and temperatures, well, on the thermometer, not particularly impressive, but add on the strength of the wind, this is what it's going to feel like. If you're spending your day in the Channel Islands, it'll feel sub-zero. Norwich, Birmingham, it'll feel like freezing. A very, very chilly feel to the day. Now on Friday, the winds will be a bit lighter, so it may not feel quite as cold, even though the temperatures will still be quite low. A change, as you can see, though, as we get on into Saturday, because those fronts in the Atlantic will make a bit more progress by this stage. We'll see some windy weather, some very wet weather for some, and as the fronts run into some cold air, especially over high ground in the north, there could be some snow.
When the weather can't decide what to do, you still can. To know what's coming, check the BBC Weather app.
Latest headlines for you from BBC News. A gunman has opened fire in the French city of Strasbourg near a busy Christmas market, killing 3 people and wounding at least 12 others. After an emergency meeting in Paris, the Interior Minister has confirmed the gunman is still on the run. He's also known to the authorities who have begun a terror investigation. Officials say he's been identified as a national security risk. Earlier on Tuesday, he escaped a raid on his apartment, which uncovered a number of grenades. The French government says it's moving immediately to strengthen security on its borders. Pressure is mounting on Theresa May from within her own Conservative Party. Leading Brexiteers have told the BBC they are increasingly confident they have enough support to trigger a vote of no confidence. She's been visiting European leaders, trying to win assurances to help rescue her Brexit deal. It's 3:30 in the morning. You're up to date on the headlines. Time now for Tuesday in Parliament.
Hello there and welcome to Tuesday in Parliament. Deferred, not cancelled. The Prime Minister's deputy says MPs will get a vote on Theresa May's deal.
Every member here will have to confront the hard but inescapable choices which now face our country today.
Yeah. The Labour leader's under pressure to call a vote of his own.
We need to do the appropriate thing at the appropriate time to have a motion of no confidence in order to get rid of this government.
A former minister offers a third way.
Maybe it's time for some sort of government of national unity.
But it's not just about Brexit. there's a passionate warning about threats to the world's wildlife.
Unless we wake up as a world, these animals are going to be extinct.
All that to come and more. But first, this was the Tuesday MPs were due to decide the fate of Theresa May's Brexit deal. Instead, as you may possibly have noticed, on Monday the Prime Minister pulled the so-called meaningful vote because she feared a heavy defeat. Instead, Mrs May began a tour of European capitals, beginning her day in the Netherlands and later fitting in a stop in Berlin for talks with Angela Merkel. She'll visit Ireland tomorrow. MPs did spend a large part of the day discussing her deal after the Speaker agreed to a request from the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn.